from the class of 2018. He committed to Indiana. His father said one of the reasons was Kansas's tie to the current FBI investigation. The Jayhawks wanted this kid. He chose not to go to Kansas because of the connection to the FBI investigation, which no one knows where it's going to go. So certainly it could wind up with Kansas missing the tournament 1 year or something like that. Jalen, you were once a very highly recruited high school basketball player. Would something like this have entered into your thought process?
Absolutely. And honestly, maybe Indiana got the connect that Kansas used to have. That's kind of how the game works. But I will say this. For players like this, if you're the #1 player in the country, your goal is to be a one and done. You don't want to pick a school that doesn't put you in a position to be on the brightest stage, which is the NCAA tournament. However, let's think about it like this. The last two #1 picks, Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz, did not play in the NCAA tournament. Yep. So it doesn't have to be the only path to success.
It doesn't have to matter, but I understand the thinking.
That makes sense.
I agree with what you're saying. You were right. Fultz didn't, his team didn't make it. Simmons' team was a disaster. But they were the best teams, one way or another. He's not going to Kansas. Let me give you another story you should be paying attention to. This one is about former Wisconsin star Nigel Hayes, and if you have followed him throughout his career, he's one of the more thoughtful people in sports. He says that his team, the Badgers, in college, once considered boycotting a game against Syracuse during the season 2016-17 in protest of the NCAA compensation rules. He went on to say, in hindsight, I think those guys, meaning his teammates, that said no, would change their mind now. That's usually what happens. The guys who don't go on to the NBA, once they leave college, they look back and they say, wow, I was exploited, and now I have nothing to show for it. To be clear about that, he went on to say that the reason they had that discussion was they agreed that only if all of them agreed to do it would they do it, and some guys didn't. So that's who he's referring to when he's saying that maybe some of those guys now regret it. What do you think?
It's going to happen, and you know what I appreciate about him? He acknowledged that he wasn't one of the guys that chose not to do it. He basically is letting us know, I wanted to do it, and my teammates, a few of those guys chose not to. Now they don't have secondary basketball careers. They look back and feel like they were exploited.
I mean, isn't this the thing that we talk about every single year when we every single year when this topic comes up, especially around March Madness, is that they have strength. These kids have the strength and the numbers that if they were to unify and figure out a way that they could all get on the same page and just walk out one day before the tournament starts, you have all of the leverage and all of the power, but it is so hard to convince people to take a stand like that. And if you're not comfortable doing it, you're not going to do it.
And also, when you've been suppressed for so long, and what I mean by that is, when you talk about college basketball, you don't normally see players doing the interviews. That's the coach.
Right.
The coach is the face of the franchise. When we're promoting games, we talk about the coaches like they're physically going to be in uniform.
Right.
So for the players, it's almost like I have this opportunity, I need to take advantage of it, and rightfully so. But there will be a group of young people that decide, like Wisconsin, we're going to take a stand. And how do we do it? By hitting people in the pockets. And when you decide not to play a basketball game, you didn't.
But the hard part of that, too, and he mentions it, are the guys that didn't go on. The star players, the ones you really need to walk out with you, the ones that know they're going to make millions of dollars come next year or the year after, those are the guys that are going to be hard to convince because they have nothing to gain by walking out. They're going to be fine. So you have to convince them that for the greater good, we got to stick together on this.
Here's who I want to challenge. College coaches. They benefit from the system more than anyone. And I appreciate it when I was in college, John Thompson protested the Prop 48 rules. So much so, Beads, he would start the game, and right before the tip-off, he would walk off. And he did that for multiple games. And you know what ended up happening to that rule? It changed. The college coaches have the leverage. Imagine if they all band together and decided we want to see change. Now change starts to happen faster.
I agree with you. I think it's something that ultimately is going to happen. It may not happen at a super high-profile school, and that might influence how much attention that it gets. I think people will pay attention regardless of where it winds up happening. I agree with you. I do believe at some point it's going to happen. One more story that I wanted to make sure everyone is aware of, and that involves the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, Shad Khan. He says he wants the Super Bowl to be played at Wembley Stadium in England. He said Wembley is a great stadium. You want to get it configured to hold Super Bowls and World Cup finals. The question is, are we buying a Super Bowl in London? And I put that question out to all of you who are watching and with us right now on my Twitter page at ESPN Greeny. I just put up a very simple poll. Would it bother you if they were to play the Super Bowl in London? And Beetle is shaking her head because her answer would be no. But the majority of the people that I have responding so far say it would. And I
wonder why, though.
22,000 people voting, 75% say it would bother them. And I'll tell you why. I'm not going to try and speak for all 22,000 of them. I have been to 22 Super Bowls in my life. And I agree that if you are not at the game, it doesn't really make any difference what city in which the game is being played. If I wasn't there, I don't think I'd even know necessarily half the time what city it's being played in. But there is no event that drips with Americana more than the Super Bowl does. It is the most quintessentially American event that we have. And especially at a time in that sport where the notion of patriotism has become such a hot-button subject, one way or another, whether you think it should be or it shouldn't be, whether it's rightfully or wrongfully, whatever you may think on that issue, it has clearly become an enormous part of the conversation surrounding that sport. I think it would be a very interesting decision in any number of ways for the National Football League to move the Super Bowl out of the United States.
I agree. And by the way, I'm with the people. I don't know which way. So you feel, would you be offended if they moved it out of the States?
I personally would not be offended, but I would be extraordinarily surprised.
Offended is not the word.
Offended is not the right word. I would be surprised if they did it because I think it would bother so many people. It would not personally bother me, but I was not surprised to see that 75% of people who voted on my poll said it would bother them.
But how much of that is a quick trigger response? Because I would venture to guess that almost all of those people, if you don't tell them where the Super Bowl is or what city the Super Bowl is being played in, they don't necessarily know or care because we're all at Super Bowl parties on our couches and our
But there would be no mystery.
Matter.
In the lead up to it, all of the discussion would be about the fact that it's not in the U.S.
Would not change. I mean, you're still watching it on TV. Most people don't even want to go to the Super Bowl. Little secret here.
I'm the person at the table that actually would bother.
Why?
I disagree with you guys. Here's why. Because in America, we feel like we help football become this powerful conglomerate. Now you've gotten successful, you want to branch out with your biggest event and take it away from us. The difference between the NBA and the NFL is a lot of differences, obviously. But the international influence in the NBA is pronounced. It's not in the NFL. If I ask you who's the best international player in the NFL, would you have an answer?
No, they just went out and got all of these guys who've never played football before, and they're trying to turn them into football players.
The best players in the NFL are All-American. I would say probably 90% of them were raised and born here, unlike the NBA. So that's what lends to what you just said. It's America's game. So therefore, it would bother me personally if they didn't play the Super Bowl in the States.
Yeah, they play some games during the regular season in England. They play them in Mexico City. They move those around. The NBA plays some international games, but they don't stage the NBA Finals in London or in Beijing or anywhere else besides
the world
in the United
small.
States.
I think it's a shrinking globe. To me, this is not a huge deal. Not that it's going to happen.
The NFL is an American game played by American players on American soil.
Well, we make American products that we sell everywhere. Why would this be any different? It's a product and a business. You want it to grow, right? Take it out to the world.
That's why it was a good conversation, and always interested to hear what anyone else thinks about it. Now, what's a playoff basketball without a little drama? Drama is his middle name. There's Draymond Green.
What's he saying, Greeny?
He gets into a semi-heated exchange with Rajon Rondo right at the end of the first half. This was basically right after a shot went in to beat the buzzer. And so, again, this happens. Then they go to halftime like 30 seconds later, and there's Charles Barkley on TNT. And Charles Barkley said, and I quote, "I just want somebody to punch him in the face." I want to punch him in the face so bad. I'm just telling you, I want to punch his butt in the face, which in and of itself is funny. He wants to punch his butt in the face.
Anatomically bizarre.
One way or another. So then he says that. So, of course, now you got to ask Draymond about it after the game. Here's what Draymond said.
A lot of guys talk on TV, stand behind a microphone and a TV screen. The fact of the matter is, if you feel that strongly about something, he's seen me a million times. If he feel that strongly about it, then punch me in my face when you see me. If you're not going to punch me in my face when you see me, then shut up. It's no different than somebody sitting behind a computer screen tweeting, "I'll knock you out," and you never see him in life. Well, he's seen me a bunch of times, and he'll see me again this year. Punch me in the face when you see me, or if not, no one cares what you would have done. You old, and it is what it is. So, if you ain't going to punch me when you see me, then stop talking about it. Period.
Okay. Does anyone at this table have a problem with Charles Barkley saying, "I want to punch Draymond Green in the face"?
Not the job of the media. I do. And I love Charles and I love Draymond, but here's the thing. The job of the media is to analyze, not antagonize. Initially, he said, "I would like somebody to punch him in the face. And then it became personal. I want to punch him in the face. And so when we see Charles, we understand that if he was a player, he would get at Draymond and or vice versa.
Yeah.
So since we see that that's his personality, we like the engagement. But what happens is when Charles does that, other members of the media start to name call. And I've talked about that on this network multiple times. It's a fine line between talking about sports and name calling and threats of violence. And that, to me, is not the job of the media.
Here's what I would say about this, and because Beetle, we had this discussion a little earlier, and Beetle was taking the other side of it. Just to paraphrase your thoughts.
Yep, Charles is not media. Ernie's not the one that said it. Charles is. Charles is a personality.
I sort of agree with both of you, and I know that it's talk show host 101 to just take a strong opinion and defend it.
It is.
But I actually agree with both of you. Cheryl and I agree. It's an inappropriate thing to say. It's an inappropriate thing to say, and you're right. They are two separate sentences. Saying I just want somebody to punch him in the face is one thing, and then saying I want to punch him in the face is something else entirely. However, Charles Barkley is just sort of in a different category, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing, because it means almost nothing that he says. And again, I love Charles Barkley too, but it is a part of a reflection of the fact that you don't really take it that seriously. When he says it, it doesn't come off as serious.
At all. I really have
no
a problem
one else could say it. If anyone else said that, it would be the #1 story in sports today.
But you can't separate the characters from the movie.
But you can.
If he said this about Steph Curry, somebody that everybody really likes, I think people will view it different. Draymond Green, as a personality on the floor, is an antagonizer. A lot of fans don't like Draymond Green, so therefore they want to see him be punched in the face by anybody. And Charles
But you just made a great analogy here. We're going to have to leave the conversation in a second, but you made a great analogy. This is all part of the movie, and most of the media is not part of the movie, but Charles is.
Correct.
Most of us are sitting back and we're talking about the things that are happening, but Charles Barkley is part of the movie. He's one of the characters every bit as much as Draymond Green is. We're getting counted out of my ear. I have to leave it there. We certainly would like to get back to this topic a little later, and we will, but we do have Thursday night.
Wait to see those guys at the finals.
Game 2 at 6 Eastern. LeBron and the Cavs, the Raptors. It's a must-win for Toronto. Like all our games, it's available on the ESPN app, so you can watch it absolutely anywhere.
That's fun.
As we continue, if you didn't see it last night, LeBron and company stole Game 1 on the road. What were the ramifications? How exactly did it happen? I'm going to break that down for you next. Get Up on ESPN.
Our yard of endless possibilities. And this spring, the Home Depot